Our next guest, Ephraim, he's not one of my favorite guys to listen to when it comes to boxing and analysis. He is my favorite boxing analyst. I could listen to him talk about the sweet science all the time. He's the host of the with Teddy Atlas podcast, Hall of Fame boxing trainer, of course. We welcome in Teddy Atlas to the Odd Couple. Teddy, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good, man. It's great to have you on. Now, look, we obviously wanted to talk to you about this Jake Paul, the Tyron Woodley fight last night. I'm not sure if you know, but within the last 20 minutes, Jake Paul tweeted out that he's retiring from boxing. So we'll get into that in a few minutes. But my quick takeaway from last night was that Jake Paul is better than we thought. I don't think he's a good professional boxer, but I think he's better than I thought. I think he's got a little heart. He outboxed Tyron Woodley. Woodley clearly is not a boxer either. And those are really my takeaways from last night. What was your takeaway from last night's fight?
Well, going into it, I had picked Paul to win. And the reason why I picked him to win was, first of all, Woodley's 39 years old, and he's lost his last 4 fights, and he's not in a good mental place. Forget about the physical place that he may or may not be in, 39 years old. But he's not in a winning place, put it that way. And he fought that way. I always talk about when I was calling all the fights at ESPN that you could talk about a guy's talent. You could talk about the same thing in football or basketball, whatever. You could talk about, or in the courtroom, the guy could be, top of his class from Harvard. But you still have to put it out there. You still have to be able to put it out in that arena. And when you can have all the talent in the world, and if you're not in the right mental state, it means nothing. It's like having a car. You can have a Ferrari, and it could have 2,000 horsepower, but the driver of the car, if he's not a confident driver, if he's been in some accidents, he's not going to drive that car up to what the mileage or the horsepower is underneath the hood. You're not going to really get a Ferrari. And I looked at that with Woodley in a way where his body's still good, the car's still good. Yeah, he's 39 years old, but he's been in accidents. He's lost 4 in a row, and he's not going to drive that car fast, and he's going to be very cautious. And he was. Right. And that's what cost him the fight. He was very cautious. And it was like he was fighting more to protect his legacy than he was to win. And look, it's not a knock on Woodley. Woodley's the greatest UFC welterweight champion of all time. He's terrific. Okay, he's a warrior. He's a samurai. I have nothing but respect for all those guys and what they do and the courage they have and the toughness they have. But just like when I was calling the fights at ESPN, I don't go by the speed, the talent, everything. I go by the temperament of the guy. Again, the guy could be the biggest puncher in the world. He could be the fastest guy in the world. But if his temperament is to lay back, well, that's what you're going to get. Because that's the drive of the car, so to speak. The body is the soldier. The mind is the general. And for me, it was not an easy pick, but a fairly easy pick, because I just saw in my mind that Woodley would be consistent with what his temperament had become. That guy who is not driving the car fast. That guy who's going to be safe. He's going to be careful. He's going to be cautious. And that's how he fought. Look, he put pressure on all night long. And as I used to always say when I was calling the fights, pressure breaks pipes, pressure breaks people. But if you don't partner up the pressure with punches, well, you know what it's like? It's like raking up the leaves in your garden, and then you get them all into a pile, and you don't get rid of the leaves. The leaves, they wind up growing back on the lawn, and you didn't get rid of the leaves. Same thing. He pressed, but he didn't do the things to get rid of Fall. He didn't throw the punches. And again, I think it was more a mental thing and more an emotional thing than was anything else. And it is what he is now. That's what Woodley is. That's why he's lost 4 fights in a row. So at the end of the day, I thought that Paul did a good job of what he needed to do. In boxing, it's about geography. Who controls the geography that best suits their physical assets? And he's taller, he's bigger, he's longer. So what did Paul do? He stayed on the outside, he used his legs, he kept a little gap, he kept the right distance, and he used his jab. And it was enough to get him a win. And I thought, as you said, to your point, we're not going to mistake him for Jake LaMotta or Marvin Hagler, but he's a guy that respected the sport. That's what I appreciate. He went there for the last couple of years when he decided to do this, and he made a commitment to learn the best he could learn. And he learned the basics. And last night you got a chance to see a little more of his repertoire because he didn't have to do those things before. So you got a chance to see he's a work in progress, but you could see that he is learning things. Now, you also could see, for me, in my eyes, where when he tried to get aggressive, you could see he was getting to the place where it was getting away from him, where he could get sloppy. He could get a little careless. He could get exposed a little. And he was smart enough to pull it up, to kind of stay within, not to get outside of himself.
Teddy, just given what we've seen from both of the Paul brothers, Jake and Logan, and their ability to command a large audience, what does this say for the state of boxing?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, look, it says a couple things. It says that these greedy promoters out there that own their little piece of turf and won't let the best fights happen because they don't control both sides. They won't let their fighter go across the street, so to speak, and make the best fight that the audience wants. That the fans, they will go somewhere else to get alternate entertainment. Listen, this isn't traditional boxing. I think we all understand that. But it is entertainment. And, again, I think that when the fans can't get – they want Crawford and Spence. That's just one of many fights they want, one of many. And there's a lot of good fights out there that could be made. But there's different promoters. And so they won't make the fight. They're going to protect that guy. They're going to control that guy, and they're going to keep him undefeated. They're going to put him on their network, which is their financial partner, and they're not going to care about the public. They figure the public's still going to be there when they put the big fights on, and so they're not going to give them the competitive fights, the kind of fights that they want to get. So the fans are going to go. So that's what it says. The fans will go somewhere else. You don't give them what they want in the restaurant, they're going to go across the street to the other restaurant. That's one thing it says. But I think it also says something else. I think that people's attention spans are getting less and less, and they want the quick fix, and they want their imagination to be pleased, to think that just to be able to kind of to go out there with their imagination and think that they're going to get something that's different, something that's going to surprise them. I mean, look, at the end, Mike Tyson wasn't being watched because of the athlete he was. I mean, it was a morbid curiosity to see if he was going to bite someone's head off, or do something, do something crazy. And I think that the curiosity seekers out there, that the fences are being pushed back, where they're looking more and more for different alternate ways to be entertained. And I also think that the people that came up with this idea were brilliant because in its own way, the only way I can explain it, and it's a phenomena of these YouTubers being able to do what they're doing and be able to make this kind of money, is for me, I call it the Matrix Unplugged. Everyone knows the Matrix series, how they made millions and millions of dollars and everybody saw the Matrix series. This is, somebody understood that you take if you got 20 million followers, you can do something with that. Mm-hmm. So they took all these YouTube followers and they took YouTube and they put it live, like the Matrix Unplugged. They took it and they put it live into a boxing ring, where now you got live video games in a boxing ring, where you have the YouTubers are playing in real life now. That they transported it into a prize ring, and where
Teddy,
all the fans are with them, and that's their guy. And they're playing a different version of YouTube now. And they're watching their guy, the live YouTuber, and it's really, if you think about it, it's fascinating that they found a market and they've been able, to cash in on it. And I tell you, you got to give them credit. They're not doing anything criminal, and they took their following and they said, we're going to take the YouTube, we're going to take all these people that are sitting home playing YouTube and everything, and now we're going to take it to live action.
Teddy Atlas, great. I want to ask you one thing. I got to ask you this. It's a historic question, and I've only got you got 45 seconds to answer it.
Okay.
Sugar Ray Leonard was one of my favorite fighters growing up. I would take Sugar Ray over Floyd. Who you got in the Sugar Ray Leonard Floyd Mayweather fight?
All right, I'm going to answer this and put it to a rest. I love Floyd. Look, Floyd's been real smart, but in some ways, the Paul brothers are like Floyd. Now, people are going to lose their minds, but what I mean is they're smart. Floyd was very smart at picking his opponents, especially later in his life. Very smart. And look, he was a great defensive fighter, and he beat the best guys around at this time, and he beat Pacquiao when he was a little past himself, all that stuff. But having said that, if Floyd was around in the 80s, forget about Sugar Ray Leonard. He loses to Sugar Ray, he loses to Hearns, he loses to Durant, he might lose to Pernell Whitaker. I mean, that's four guys I just mentioned right there. And forget about moving up and fighting Marvin Hagler. Just forget about that. So, look, I love Floyd. Don't get me wrong. But he wasn't around when the great Sugar Ray Leonard was around. And back in those days, there's 4 or 5 guys that would have had his name, and they would have been able to, I believe, have wins over him.
I agree. That's our man, Teddy Atlas. Teddy, man, great stuff as always. We appreciate your time.